this is true, then our country is in a lot of trouble.
We would have these trips, these special trips.
But he said my daddy takes the bodies to the grocery store and he grinds them up and puts it in the hamburger. And nobody ever knows it.
How can kids 6, 8, 10 years old be describing rituals that come from a book like the Book of the Dead? It's hard to get your mind around people being capable of this kind of evil.
This is Dan Bidondi of TruthRadioShow.com. I am honored to offer my listeners a 1-month free subscription to nystv.org. Subscribers will have access to thousands of Now You See TV videos, from spiritual warfare to biblical and occultic topics, banned from YouTube videos, and much more. Subscribe today on nystv.org and use the promo code DANTheMan and receive your first month free. And welcome everybody to the Dan Bidondi Show right here on TruthRadioShow.com, broadcasting live on Rumble. So guys, we got a special show for you today. CPS, also known as Child Protective Services. CPS corruption exposed, false allegations and threats brought amongst this awesome family, the McGaffin family, and the family sues now because all alleged charges were dropped. So I'm just waiting for Tim to get on here, and our guest, Timothy McGaffin, he's going to be joining us. And guys, we talk about this frequently on the show here. He's going off to get a drink. But we do talk about this frequently about, just the corruption of CPS, man. And these people just utterly like tyrants, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying everybody, I want to put that out real quick. That doesn't mean everybody who works for the Child Protective Services. Here in Rhode Island, they're called DCYF. And there's different acronyms and names. But generally, it's CPS, Child Protective Services. They're supposed to protect children. But unfortunately, a lot of times children, unspeakable things happen on the CPS custody. You know what I mean? And, children being molested, put on sex trafficking rings, all kinds of stuff, what have you. It literally goes on within the Child Protective Services. And also we have pedophiles who actually work for CPS. So without further ado, he's an author. I had him on my show years ago, but author of Champions Never Quit. He's an awesome guy here. A good friend of mine, Tim McGaffin. So how you doing, brother? McGaffin, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely.
It's the New World Order. Thanks for knowing what's going on and having the courage to stand up against it.
Thank you, man. And just break down, man. Give introduction yourself first, and then then break down what happened, man. Because I've known you for years. You're an awesome man. You're a man of God, a God-fearing man. Yeah, you do nothing wrong. And you came up with this awesome book, man. You sent it to me years ago. I read it years ago, and that book right there, guys, Champions Never Quit. And we'll put the link up in the description. So, guys, this guy is an awesome man. I could test for myself. So, give an introduction to yourself, then get into what happened. And, you got all the time in the world you need.
Okay, thanks so much, Dan. So, first of all, my motto in life is champions never quit. And, I know the most difficult thing you can do in your life is to get back up when you get knocked down. And not only is that the most difficult thing, but that's also the greatest thing that we can do. And, that's the only type of person that's capable of doing that, of getting back up when they get knocked down, is a champion. So all of us, whenever we get back up or we keep fighting, we don't give up, or doing the greatest thing that you can do. And that's the most important thing that God cares about. And when you think about it, Jesus, he did nothing wrong, and he had to suffer for all of our sins when he did the atonement, Garden of Gethsemane, and then he was crucified. But so when you think about it, since he experienced everything that we went through, every paper cut or every physical hurt we've had or any emotional hurt, he's experienced each pain that we've had. He's gotten knocked down more than anybody, and so he had to get back up more than anybody, and so he gave us the example of what he cares about the most and what the example to follow. So, and now, I think your listeners, Dan, most of us are Christians. Not everybody's a Christian. That's totally fine. But we know, we read the scriptures, we read the Bible, that we believe in the second coming. Jesus, just like the scripture says, that there's lots of signs last days. We know we're getting closer to that. And so we know why all this is happening. And the New World Order is just Satan's counterfeit, or his imitation of the kingdom of God. It's the opposite. And we all know that, but Satan and the opposition throwing everything they can at us at the last minute, because he knows he's running out of time. And we're getting closer to the greatest miracles never before heard or seen. But anytime anybody stands up against this evil, it's a miracle. But I wanted to bring that up because when we're on the right path and we're getting closer to where we're supposed to be, lots of times strange and weird things happen. Like me, what we're going to talk about, these satanic attacks I've been going through with CPS and the police, that's what happens lots of times. Look at Alex Jones and these fake things that they're throwing at him. They throw everything they can at us to try to scare us, try to silence us, because the secret weapon is that destroys satanic craft is our testimony, is our voice. So they don't want us speaking. That's why there's an attack on free speech. All we have to say is 2 + 2 = 4, and they are like the wicked witch. They just melt. It's like throwing water on them. So that, so that's the secret weapon, is our voice. And so that's why you're doing your show. That's why, Alex has been getting the truth out, and the John Birch Society, and everybody, each one of us, our voice is so powerful. All we have to do is open up and speak the truth, and that's the secret weapon that destroys them. It's more powerful than any nuclear bomb, any weapon that they can devise. It's just our voice is more powerful than anything, and that's what destroys them.
Absolutely. And that's what I say all the time, man. A couple minutes of truth could bring down decades and billions of dollars of planning. Just a couple minutes, not even a minute of truth, just would squash entire operation altogether. You know what I mean? That's why they say loose lips sink ships, because in our case, we're whistleblowers, you know what I mean? So, right. We've been getting drastically attacked, man. And, Alex Jones, we could get into that later too if you want. Alex Jones, what he's going through is just ridiculous. It really is. And I have my little disagreements with Alex on some things, but you know what, for the most part, because the thing is, they dragged me into this thing. You know what I mean? I've been to 2 depositions. One was 10 hours. Another one was like 4 or 5 hours. It was ridiculous, man. And, the 16 hours of my life I'll never get back for a bunch of BS, plain and simple. And every day in the courts, they're bringing up my videos, my names. I'd be thrown around. The lawyer for Sandy Hook, it's okay to him call me harassing people, which I never harassed anybody. But, when the Sandy Hook police chief... Yeah. Dodging my questions, and then he smacks the mic out of my hand. But yeah, I'm not supposed to say nothing about that, and so they, literally slandered me all over the court. And I should actually turn around and sue them if you ask me. But they slandered me all over the court, but I'm not allowed to say nothing. You know what I mean? And we can get to that later, man. But so what's going on with you, man? Like, and I know, like, I guess you got a daughter with autism. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have a special needs adult daughter who was diagnosed with apraxia and dyspraxia. So basically, she functions on the level of a 6-year-old, a first grader, and even though she's 21 now, she, mentally she's like a 6-year-old. Wow.
So and obviously, I mean, like, it takes a lot of care. It's like still taking care of a young little girl. You know what I mean? And I had a cousin like that, and so like my cousin was a boy that he's 26 years old, and it's like taking care of a 14-year-old, if that, you know what I mean? So, right. So like there's a lot of needs that go along with this. So, what happened here? So is she the fulcrum of the point here? Like basically, is that what DCF is coming at you with? I mean, CPS, is that what they're coming after you with?
Yeah, let me get into that. So let me get some
Okay.
background here. So I married my wife, Sherry, back on May 2nd, 2015, and she had 4 kids at the time. So I became a stepfather, instant father, took on 4 stepchildren, and they were all they were either teenagers or about to become teenagers. So then later on, they were all teenagers. So I had 4 teenagers. Stepfather to 4 stepchildren, but their biological dad sexually abused them when they were little, and he's in prison for being a pedophile. So I took on this huge responsibility, and because how many people in the world are gonna do that? And it's a challenge to be a step parent, and so I took that on, and now with Sherry, I have my my own children. So we have 6 kids in total with the 4 stepkids. So
God bless you.
yeah, thanks. And then one of them is special needs, one of our daughters. So, but I wanted to bring that up because the girls, when they're teenagers, not all, but when you're a teenager, your self-confidence, your self-esteem sometimes is not at its best. We all been through that. So, but on top of that, the fact that they went through some trauma when they were little, they have some, their minds are easy to prey upon. And so the reason I bring that up is because my wife's mother-in-law, who I want to get her name out, is Susan Manning. She, for years and years, so 30 years ago, she lost custody of her 3 children, and one of them, her daughters, is my wife. And so the custody was given, she was divorced. She got divorced, and the custody of the children was given to my father-in-law, my wife's dad. And there's a reason for that, because Susan Manning is like a psychopath, and she thinks all men are abusive. She's falsely accused, according to my records, 9 men of abuse, including her 5 ex-husbands. And she was married to two men at the same time at one point, and she was always trying to convince my wife growing up that her dad was abusive. And she kidnapped my wife 3 times. On one particular day, it was on my wife's 16th birthday, December 10th, 1985. Her dad was spending the day with my, future to-be wife. So she was 16 at the time, and she asked if she could go have dinner with her mom, Susan Manning, and her dad said, "No, it's my time to spend with you. You can spend time with your mom another time." And so my wife called her mom and was saying, "Oh, you're right. My dad is abusive," and crying. And so then Susan says, "Well, he's abusive. I'm going to come at this time, and I'm going to pick you up." And so she came in the vehicle, and picked up my wife and took him away. And her dad didn't know where they went. And so the reason I bring that up, because this is the same pattern that happened to me now when I get into it. But so now I marry Sherry. I have the 4 stepkids. And then with the special needs adult, a few years ago, she gets into violent episodes. And so every once in a while, either she's dehydrated, she's had too much sugar, or I think she's being egged on by her sisters. They try to get her to do stuff. She'll violently throw things, Barbie dolls, books, dishes, forks, silverware, toys, as hard as she can. And if you get hit by them, if a little kid gets hit by them, you can seriously get hurt if it hits you on your face or in your eye. And so the standard thing that you're supposed to do when she gets like that is you're supposed to get them in a bear hug, restrain them, and many times you escort them out of the room to protect people from getting hurt. So on one particular instance, that's what happened. She was throwing things as hard as she could. I restrained her. I put her in a bear hug. I escorted her out of the room to protect the little kids, my kids, from getting hurt. And I put her on her bed. And that's exactly what happened. And that's what you're supposed to do. When you go to the public schools and they have all the special needs kids there, they usually have, 2 men there that are one or two men that are there for the purpose of if they get into violent behaviors, to calm them down. And they also, at the middle school here where I'm at, I homeschool our kids. I'm just saying, at the middle school, they have a room where there's padding on the roof, on the walls, and on the ceiling, because when you restrain them and take them to the room, they're flailing, they're getting violent, you let them go. You don't want them to get hurt. They might fall down on the floor, or hit furniture or something like that.
Well, the test to that, I used to work at a group home with young adolescents, so coming out of the training school. So that's exactly what we did. If they got out of control like that, went into fits, that's what we were supposed to do. The same exact thing. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So now, having that understanding and kind of having some background on my mother-in-law, Susan Manning, then fast forward to last September, the last week of September into the beginning of October of 2021, the last weekend there, my then 17-year-old stepdaughter, she asked us if she could go to lunch with her boyfriend. It was on a Friday, and we said yes, and we told her she'd be back in an hour. Well, an hour passed, and we texted her, we called her, no response until about 8 p.m. at night, or 8:30 p.m. She finally responded, and she comes home and she's crying hysterically. And my wife told me, watch, she's going to claim that her phone ran out, her battery ran out. And that's exactly what she claimed. Oh, my phone ran out, the battery ran out. Anyways, long story short, we figured out she was lying to us about where she was and what she was doing with her boyfriend. And we didn't know at the time, but we have found out since that she was having sex with this, her boyfriend, which is our family. That's one of our rules, is you're not supposed to have sex until you're married. And so we teach our kids that, and that's one of the rules. But we didn't know that's what she was doing at the time, but we found out later. But because she lied to us about where she was and what she was doing, we grounded her for a week from seeing her boyfriend. And then me and my wife and my two kids and my special needs daughter, we went to Park City, Utah for a week to stay at the Wyndham Hotel for free, because a relative of ours had a bunch of extra points, and so we were able to use his hotel points for the week when we went on a trip as a family. But my 18-year-old and my 16-year-old, they wanted to stay back to work and do school. That's what they claimed. And then my adult stepson, he was working and everything, and he's since moved out of the house. But while we were gone, that our then 17-year-old, my 17-year-old stepdaughter, she went to Susan Manning and she complained that that she is having a really hard time and that I'm bad, that her stepfather is bad. And so she tried, I don't know what the exact conversation was between her and Susan Manning, but the subject matter was that I'm bad. And all that happened is that she was grounded for a week. And and because Susan Manning, she thinks all men are abusive, she has men issues, she started to give our stepchildren the dialogue that, yes, me as their stepfather is abusive, I am bad. And so she encouraged and enabled them to have this view of me and undermine me and my wife as parents. And, all Susan had to do was say, look, so-and-so, you may disagree with your parents, but they're your parents and they have these rules for a reason, to teach you and protect you because they care about you. That's what she needed to do. Instead, she's saying, she throws us under the bus and says that we're bad. And so then from about that time forth, her and her sister started trying to record us in our house to try to get evidence that I'm abusive. And so they have all these recordings recording us in our own room. They hid their little smartphones around the house trying to record us. And then I was getting tired of our then 17-year-old's stepdaughter's dramatic behavior and how she was acting. And so she turned 18 on November 6th. And then she asked if she can move out of the house. And me and my wife said, we want you to wait until the school year is over, till May 2022. But it kept getting worse, her behavior. And so I agreed to let her move out and live with Susan Manning. But at this time, I didn't know Susan Manning behind the scenes was telling her that I'm bad and I'm abusive, and encouraging and enabling this mindset. So after she moved out on January 1st. Then her younger sister, who was always trying to please and copy her older sister, then wanted to move out to live with her older sister. So now she's made to want to move out too. And so then we saw some things in January that really concerned us. And so we called a meeting to talk to Susan Manning about what she was doing and how she was undermining me and my wife. So we had a meeting on January 30th. And at that meeting, Susan is saying that I'm trying to keep everybody's names private, so that's why I'm pausing here, trying to not say their names. But she was saying that my wife's dad, so my father-in-law, was abusive to Susan Manning, her ex, who they were previously married, and my wife's dad, got custody of. My father-in-law got custody of, but Susan Manning did not get custody of. So she's telling our stepdaughter that your grandfather is abusive. You never had a bad experience with him, but behind the scenes, he's abusive. And I think me, is the same way, right in front of me. And then there's claiming that I yell all the time. And my stepdaughter saying I yell all the time. And I'm like, I don't yell all the time. Ask your younger sister, the 16-year-old, well, that's 17. Ask her. She'll tell you that I hardly ever yell. I'm like, I can't even remember yelling at her one time in 7.5 years. And then Susan says, oh, no, Tim, so-and-so says you yell all the time. I'm like, what? Why would she say that? Because I never yell at her. And I sometimes, about 14 times, have yelled at the older one to about an hour here. And when I yell, it's for like 5 seconds. And it's because they're not being angels. It's because they're in big trouble.
Well, there's nothing wrong with yelling at the kids. I mean, if they're doing something wrong, that we're supposed to do that as parents. You know what I mean? That's our job. We don't want to do that, but we have to. If we don't, spare the rod, spoil the child, the Bible says, you know what I mean? So, like, if we don't discipline our children, they're going to be corrupt and everything else. So there's nothing wrong with doing that. But, yeah, I'm sorry to cut you off. I just, these people just, and the thing is, you should ask Susan Manning, you never yelled at your children?
Oh yeah, she yelled all the time, and that's what my wife is so upset about. She's the biggest hypocrite because my wife is saying, Tim, you hardly ever yell. It's very rarely, and when you do, it's because they're in really big trouble. It's understandable. My mom yelled at us all, so this is ridiculous that she's acting this way. And anyways, and so like for one example, the older stepchild, when I was asking her if she was doing her chores for 3 days straight, feeding the bunny rabbits and changing their droppings, their poop droppings, she said yes, 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 yes. When I went to check out on the bunnies after 3 days, they're swimming around in like an inch of like sewage, liquid poop. And so and so, get out here. Like, what? You lied to me for 3 days. The bunnies could get killed from swimming around in poop. And so that was the extent of the yelling. 5 seconds of being mad because you totally lied to me. That's an example. So it's hardly ever. So this claim that's all the time is false. And so anyways, later on when we got their cell phone and we started going to their text messages, well, there's the older stepdaughter who claimed I yell all the time. That very night of that meeting on January 30th, telling her younger sister, she said, yeah, just because you don't really yell at her, idiot, you referring to me, an idiot referring to me, doesn't mean that you never yell. So she went from saying I yell all the time to then admitting in the text message to her younger sister that I don't really yell, and I yell so infrequently, but it doesn't mean I never yell. So I yell so infrequently that she has to go revert. So anyway, so she's just making this up. And so then, and also she was telling, Susan Manning was telling my wife, well, because back in the fall of 2021, in December 2021, Susan asked my wife at dinner if I'm abusive. And my wife's like, no, Tim's not abusive. Why are you asking me this? Well, because Aubrey says that he is. And Aubrey was crying really hard. Well, that's fine. Aubrey's good at turning on the tears. She's really good at fake crying. That's what she does. And that's what Susan Manning does too. She's really good at fake crying as well. So anyway, so I just want to give that background. So now fast forward.
And Susan Manning, by the way, guys, that's the mother-in-law. So if you just joined the show, Susan
my
Manning.
Mother-in-law, my wife. That's right. And I want to get her name out because she is the abuser and she is the one who inverses reality. And so, so then on February 1st night, my wife went to an herb class, and while she's gone, I hear this big ruckus downstairs between the kids, and I go down there to ask the younger stepchild, who's a teenager, why didn't you come get me and what's going on? And anyways, I had a talk with her about the previous days before, and I asked her, why did you lie to Susan Manning, and why did you tell her I yell all the time when you know that's not true, when I don't even yell hardly ever, and I can't even remember yelling at you so-and-so for the last 7 years, and if I did, it's like one time. I can't even remember yelling one time, but I definitely don't yell all the time, so why did you tell her that? And so I'm confronting her and telling her, I don't appreciate you lying, and I can see what's going on here. And I told her how corrupt CPS is, because I could see what was going on. And unbeknownst to me, she's recording. And in this recording, she tells me, well, you abused our special needs adult daughter, when she totally overly exaggerated when I put her in the bear hug, escorted her from one room to the other, claiming that I just violently, for no reason, just picked her up and just like threw her across the room and body slammed her, which never happened. And I'm telling her on the recording, I never did that. And so, that I didn't do that. That when she gets that way, gets violent, that you're supposed to restrain her, escort her out of the room. That's what I did. So now why are you saying this? And then on the recording, I said to her that she has psychological issues going back to what happened to her with her dad. So that's all that's on the recording. That's it. So there's nothing bad on there. But anyway, so I just want to get that out there. So now we fast forward to all of a sudden April 24th, and on this Sunday in the morning, my son is jumping up and down on our bed over and over again, and my wife is telling him to stop, and I told him to stop, and he wouldn't stop. So I just got him, took him to his room, and I put him on his bed to jump. And so that was like at 9 in the morning. Then we go to 12. We come back. It's now about 3:30. I'm making a sandwich for Timmy, my son, who's 5. He's Timothy John McGaffin III. I'm the second. Anyways, and all of a sudden, and I don't know why, it's never happened before, I'm just making a sandwich, and he faints in the kitchen. And he faints and he falls forward, and he hits the top of his head on one of the bottom cabinet doors. Then he rolls back onto his back, and I yelled for my wife to come out to see what's going on. And we thought maybe he had low blood sugar, maybe he didn't eat enough, but we just ate a peanut butter and honey sandwich right before that. Maybe because he got too hot, because he had like 2 sweaters on, he was running around outside. Maybe because I was talking about going to the dentist, so he got lightheaded. I don't know. It's never happened before. I don't know why he fainted. He just fainted. But the stepdaughter, she wasn't there when I put Timmy on his bed. She wasn't there when Timmy fainted. So she never saw anything at either thing. But she comes up like an hour later when we're eating snacks at the table, saying that it sounded like something happened. She asked what happened. Well, we said, well, Timmy fainted. We think it's because he wasn't eating enough. And then Timmy made a comment that I put him on his bed, and that gave him a headache earlier in the morning. And so that he fainted because of that. It wasn't because he wasn't eating enough. But Timmy gets really super defensive, and he's always and the older stepdaughter makes fun of him a lot. So because after she found out that he fainted, she was making fun of him for fainting. So he got real defensive and was trying to say, it had nothing to do with that. It was because of me putting him on his bed earlier. So anyways, the point is, the stepdaughter didn't see anything that in the morning. She didn't see him faint, but she combines both things into like a single event, as if it's so she claims that I threw Timmy so hard on his bed that he fainted, and he passed out right then and there. And then in her text message to her older sister, the older sister's like, what? That doesn't sound like something that I would do. Are you sure he did that? Did he play throw him or mad throw him? And the other stepdaughter's like, mad throw him. So she just makes it up. So then that following Wednesday, on April 27th, Annette Monson, and that's the CPS caseworker, I'm in the backyard. I'm building a gazebo. she knocks on the door, and our stepdaughter is really scared, and she usually just opens up the door, but this time she doesn't. She runs into the backyard, and she's like, someone's here. And she was acting really weird. And my wife goes to answer the door, and this lady named Annette Monson says, hello, for work thing that happened, Dan. Hello, my name is Annette Monson. I'm with DCFS. Can I come in? And my wife said, no. Annette, no. Sherry, no. Annette, okay, I have a report between Haley and Tim, and I'd like to interview them. And then my wife sat there and stared at this lady in disbelief for about 15 seconds. And as she's staring at her, Annette Monson says, do you have a problem if I talk to them in an accusatory tone? And my wife said, what is this about? And then Annette said, we want to talk to the kids first. And my wife said, I'm going to talk to my husband, and you can wait here. And she shut the door. Then she comes back. She talks to me. She says, CPS is here. I'm like, what the heck? And my wife said, I'm just going to tell him that we're not going to talk to him and to go away. I said, yeah, I agree. And so my wife went back and said, yeah, we don't want to talk. We don't want you to talk to our kids. And then I asked, can I at least see the kids to verify that they are okay? And my wife said, no, thanks, and shut the door. So we exercise our God-given constitutional right, Dan, to decline to speak to CPS. I immediately called the police, and I reported to the police that I will talk to CPS once I have an attorney present, but I'm not going to talk to them without an attorney. And I wanted to get that on the police record. So then that night, we're trying to figure out what the heck is going on. And so my wife calls her mom, Susan Manning, and asks her if she called CPS, to which Susan says that she asked for advice. And my wife said, we're done. No more presents. You're not going to see the kids anymore. And so we believe that she's the one who called CPS. And here's another point, Dan. If the whole episode that they're trying to claim is abuse with my special needs daughter, well, why didn't they go to CPS back on February 1st when my stepdaughter accused me of abuse and recorded that, and I denied it? Why didn't they go back then? Why did they hold on to this magical recording for? And then they waited until Timmy fainted, and then they went off of Haley's. Anyways, her name is Haley. They went off of her fabricated story of her version of events, which was false. So that night, at about 10:15 p.m., because our original rule was no smartphones until you're 18. You get a flip phone only, and that's the rule that our oldest son followed, and he had a flip phone. But I compromised on the rule for the two stepdaughters because they're dramatic teenagers, and I didn't want them to, I didn't, how it is. So I compromised, and plus the 16-year-old, she was given her smartphone for free from her friend, and her friend wanted to get her on their family plan, which I said, you can have the phone, but you can't get on their family plan. But here's the rules. You can't have Snapchat. You can't be on social media and the internet for hours on end. We have a screen time rule of less than 2 a day. So you have to follow those rules. So anyways, I'm like, obviously that night on April 27th, after CPS showed up, I'm like, these smartphones are not doing anything good for her self-esteem. So I went downstairs and I went in the room and I said, where's your phone? Give me your phone, because we're going back to the original rule of no smartphone until you're 18. So I got her phone, and then I was tempted to throw the phone away in the trash that night because I just didn't want to have it as a temptation to give back to her later on. But I decided to sleep on it, and then good thing I did, because the next day my wife went down and asked our stepdaughter for the passcode so she could access the phone. So she got the passcode. And then once she got the passcode, my wife was able to access it, and we got all the text messages between her and her sister. We were able to get into their social media accounts. We got all this evidence of a whole scheme and a whole plot between them and Susan Manning to falsely accuse me and my wife of child abuse. And so then after 10 a.m., all of a sudden my son, Timmy, says to my wife, hey, Mom, so-and-so is running away out the front yard and down the street. And my wife runs out, and she sees our daughter get into this vehicle, and they drive away. And so she immediately thinks that her mom, Susan Manning, is the one behind this, thing was done to my wife growing up 3 times, just like the story I related to you when she was 16. And so then they drive Haley over, or my stepdaughter over to the McDonald's parking lot, and it's her friend's mom that's doing it, not Susan Manning. But we're pretty sure that Susan Manning is the one who asked her or told her to do it, because we have the text messages of my stepdaughter talking and giving the contact information to Susan Manning of her friend's mom. And we believe this time Susan Manning is doing it this way because she knows she has this history of doing this. So she's trying to have plausible deniability in the situation. But they drive to the McDonald's, they call the police, and this lady's name is Liz Keychon Grimshaw. And she says that my stepdaughter has a statement to make to the police. And my stepdaughter asks them, what should she say, or what should I say? So if she's really being abused, so she should already know what she's going to say. And we think the main reason why she ran away, quote unquote, is because she knew that she was in trouble, because she knew what we're going to find on her phone. And also, right after she ran away, my wife immediately called 911 and reported a kidnapping. But anyways, so long story short, she tells the police that her stepfather's abusive, and she says she's not being abused, but I have abused my special needs daughter, and I've abused my son, Timmy. And so they just go off of her words. They don't apply any scrutiny to the words that she has provided. Not one question is asked like, well, that doesn't make sense. How? So if Timmy was thrown so hard that he then onto the bed that he fainted, how did that happen? Did you see this? That should be one of the first questions they should ask. Then the response would have been, no, I didn't. Okay, so let's go talk to the parents first, and let's get their version of events of what happened before we go to the extreme here. And so there was no scrutiny applied to their words. And then it's like, well, how did he pass out? Did he all of a sudden just hit his head so hard he was knocked unconscious, or did he like stumble around after he got off the bed and just fell over? So there's no details because no scrutiny was applied to the words that she was telling them. And so anyways, then later that afternoon, like every single police car in our town of Ephraim, like there's only 6 police officers in the whole town. But there was more police officers that came to our house than there's police officers in the town. And there's like 7 or 8 police cars. And I had my camera on videotaping the whole thing. And later on, when we did let me tell everybody, all the listeners, everything's been dismissed. All the false allegations thrown at us by DCFS has been dismissed. The DCFS case is closed, and the criminal case has been completely dismissed. So I just want to get that out there. And I was initially charged with child abuse of Timmy, but they immediately dismissed that a few days later after they found out that my stepdaughter didn't witness it. And then the charge of child abuse against my special needs adult daughter, they dismissed that later on once we started providing them all the text messages and all the evidence of the scheme that's going on. But the point I want to make here is, first of all, we have a constitutional God-given right to decline to talk to CPS.
Yeah.
And so, but they act like if you decline to talk to them, you must be hiding something, you must be guilty, when it should be the other way around. And so, let me just there's so much information, let me just kind of get it shortened down here. So after we got some of the documents through the discovery process, they did this threat assessment document to see what type of threat I was. And they falsely said on this threat assessment document that I had a history of misdemeanor crimes, which is 0% true. I have 0 criminal history. I have absolutely no criminal history ever.
Wow.
And so it assessment document that raised the threat level higher. And but even with the threat level higher, with that false thing in the document, I was still in the lowest bracket of the threat assessment, but they still responded to me as if I was in the highest threat bracket, which is you're supposed to.
So they showed up to your house with like the whole police station basically, and what happened? They kicked your door in. What transpired? I
opened the door. I'm filming the whole time, and they say they want to take away my 2 youngest kids to the Children's Justice Center to interview them. And I'm like, well, my youngest daughter, she doesn't even talk yet. She's only 3. She only says some words, because I knew that they're trying to take my kids away. So like, this is a bunch of BS. And then, they had a warrant. And I'm like, how did they get this warrant? I'm like, what evidence do you have to get? You have to have some type of probable cause or some type of thing to get to the judge to try to get this warrant. Well, this is the beginning to try to get evidence. And two, I want to make a point of, when we got the text messages, there's a whole bunch of text messages between my stepdaughters talking about Susan Manning, saying that CPS showed up, and they're talking about, well, Susan said that CPS is going to return, and they're going to come with a warrant, and they're going to remove the 2 youngest kids and my special needs daughter and take them away. Well, how do they know that? How does Susan Manning knows what's going to happen before it happens? Because before they have even gathered any evidence, because this was before my stepdaughter ran away the next morning. These text messages before that. So how does Susan Manning know what is going to happen before they've even gathered any quote unquote evidence? Because the police are saying they gathered evidence when Haley ran away that day, but Susan's already saying what's going to happen before that even happened, before Haley even ran away, you see? And so what communication is going on there between the CPS caseworker, Annette Monson, and Susan Manning?
So basically, the police probably had in their mind that, oh man, this is a guy over here beating his kids probably, and build the cops up with this mindset that you were probably beating your kids. Did they arrest you or anything? They came to your house.
And let me get to that. But before I do, we also found out later that day. We also found out later on, according to body cam footage, because they handed off my stepdaughter to Susan Manning later in the day, because she went. They gave her de facto custody. She went to the police station with my stepdaughter, and the police told Susan Manning, we've talked to both county attorneys, and there's nothing we can do. We're not going to charge Tim with anything because there's no evidence, and you need to take so-and-so home. It's over. And Susan Manning told them, well, if you're not going to do anything, I will kidnap. I'm telling you right now that I will kidnap so-and-so, my stepdaughter, if you're not going to do anything. And even after she said that, later on, the county attorney, Daniels, who we believe, because he's the county attorney, he gave de facto custody of our stepdaughter to Susan Manning, even after she told the police that if they're not going to do anything, she will kidnap them. And then remember, my wife called 911 after our stepdaughter ran away after 10 in the morning. And we never got a call back from the police until about 5 hours later. And so what does that tell you? And then when they called us, they told us that our stepdaughter was with Susan Manning to go pick her up. But then we went there, nobody's there. So then we called the police, and then the police called Susan Manning, and she was attempting to flee the county. And they had to threaten her 3 times with kidnapping charges to induce her to bring back our stepdaughter. So she told the police what she's going to do. She's going to kidnap them. They give de facto custody of our stepdaughter to Susan Manning. And then she's caught in the process of doing the very thing that she said she's going to do. So that is gross negligence by the police that they even allowed our stepdaughter to even go with her. And
you got arrested. That's weird.
So then they take away my 2 youngest kids. And then after they take them away, I'm walking back to the house. And then all of a sudden they tell me, Tim, you're under arrest. Sergeant Stephen Cragun, Cragun. I'm under arrest. I'm like, what? Under arrest for what? Assault. Assault on who? What the heck? And then they arrest me. And then in the police reports later on, it says that I was very calm, and they're really surprised that I was so calm because they were told by Susan Manning that I'm like this raving lunatic. And so now they're like, well, the way he acted towards us is different than how you portrayed him. They're surprised by that. So I got taken to jail and that night. And then when I'm there, the booking officer said that this is weird because we don't know what you're being charged with. They're still trying to figure out the judge. And usually they have the charges by now, but we don't know what your charges are. And so it took a long time until they told me what my charges were. And then I got to, call my wife. I'm talking to her. As I'm talking to her, she told me that she's able to go pick up our children from the Children's Justice Center, and she's able to get our stepdaughter back too. So the three of them, the teenage stepdaughter and my two youngest kids, and then Annette Monson, the CPS caseworker, is all disappointed, saying that there's not enough evidence to put them into foster care. Not enough evidence, lady. Try no evidence. And then my wife recorded Annette Monson and everything she said, unbeknownst to her now. And we have statements that Annette Monson made in this recording that contradict what she has said in court. And in what she told my wife is that they were going to ask that I stay in jail for a week with no bail. And as the booking officer is overhearing my wife say this, he said that's not DCFS's call to make. They can't decide how long you're going to stay in jail. They can't do that. And then so I have to stay in jail overnight because they told me, because this is my first time ever being arrested, they don't have this state ID thing yet. And so I'm not in the system. And so they had to create a state ID. So I have to be there overnight. And so then the next morning, they knock on my door and they say I have to stay there for a week on no bail. And I'm like, how is that possible when the only quote unquote evidence you have is only the words of my stepdaughter? You haven't even heard from me yet. And whatever she has said, no scrutiny has been applied to the words that she has said. And then, so then what we found out, so anyways, now here's something really cool, Dan. So then about 3 that afternoon, I kept having, anyways, I was praying the whole time to get out of there. And I was relieved that they didn't take my kids away. But then I was thinking about 3 in the afternoon, I was thinking about different figures in the scriptures that have been falsely accused and had to go to jail, such as Joseph, with the coat of many colors and things like that. And I was thinking how they were falsely accused. They had to suffer all these afflictions and stuff. But I was specifically thinking, because, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, so I was also thinking about the Book of Mormon, because in the Book of Mormon, in there, it's about Alma and Almulek, these 2 ancient American prophets who, anyways, there's a whole account of them testifying of Jesus, and then they were falsely accused. They were thrown into prison. They had to suffer many afflictions, but after many days, they were given the power of God to command the walls of the prison to be destroyed, and all the lawyers and judges who falsely accused them were in the prison at that time, and they all got killed, and Alma and Almulek were able to walk free out of the prison, and all the Luciferian lawyers and judges were killed. So I was just thinking about that, and as I'm thinking about that, I prayed and I said again, Heavenly Father, please command the powers of darkness to disperse, and please help me get out of jail. And then about 2 hours later, just before 5 o'clock, they knocked on my cell and they said, McGaffin, we're doing your paperwork. You're being released. And then about 10 minutes later, they opened up the cell door and they said, I'm being released. And 3 times I heard the sergeants there that work there at the San Pete County Jail say, this never happens. And they're like, did you get the order from the county attorney that McGaffin is supposed to be released? Like, yep. And this never happens. So I'm like, bye. And then I found out afterwards, because, it took just exactly what Annette Monson told my wife, that they were going to ask that I stay in jail for a week. And they told me the next day I had to stay in jail for a week. But I got out of there. I thwarted their plans. And we found out afterwards, the reason why I was able to get out of jail, because we were able to retain our defense attorney, Neil Skousen, who is the brother of Joel Skousen, who you may know, who does strategic relocation.
Yeah, yep. I got that book, actually.
Yep. So Neil Skousen is my attorney, and he looks at the affidavit of probable cause, the arrest warrant, and on there is 2 false statements by the Steve Cragen, the police sergeant, saying that I previously in the past convicted a felony. I'm a convicted felon. And then I'm currently on probation or parole for a past felony. And when I committed these 2 things they said I did, which I never did, that I was currently on probation or parole. So because I'm a convicted felon and I was on probation or parole, I can't be released out of jail, and I have no bail to get out. And so he was able to approach the county attorney and show them that this was false. And so the county attorney agreed. And Neil Skousen was also negotiated that I don't have to pay any bail or anything like that. I was to get out. So before I couldn't pay bail to get out, but now I don't have to pay any bail to get out. So I was able to get out, thwarted their plans. and to try to keep me in there for a week. And so that's why I want to sue the police department for making these false statements. So they had no evidence on me. They had to fabricate stuff. They had to lie to the judge under oath, under penalty of perjury, to get this arrest warrant. So I was arrested under false pretenses. Because if he didn't lie and make those false statements, they would never have been able to get that arrest warrant. And I would never have been arrested.
Wow.
And then when they got the information that Haley never saw Timmy faint, that they never saw him get put on their bed, the prosecuting attorney, Eric Butler, immediately dismissed that charge that week. And then since then, we were able to present them the evidence, and we were able to get everything dismissed. But then I called Annette Monson, the CPS caseworker, to complain, and that was on July. I'm trying to find the exact date when I called. It was July, but while I'm looking for that date, because through the discovery process, through the criminal case, there's a discovery. We're able to get all the police reports and everything like that.
Yeah.
And in the police reports is a bunch of false statements by Annette Monson, the CPS caseworker, about me, and the recording, which they claimed I admitted that I abused people, which is absolutely 100% false. And Susan Manning admitted in court, because there was a hearing that happened where Susan Manning was cross-examined, where Neil Skousen cross-examined her, and he said that you made assumptions in that recording, didn't you? And she said yes. And he asked her if your assumptions are always correct. And she gave a big word salad response. And he said, well, is that a no? So essentially, yeah. She's saying, no, my assumptions are not always correct. And he asked her, does the stepdaughter, do you know her to lie? And she said, yes, I do know her to lie. And so where I was going with that is there was no actual evidence of any abuse in the recording. And when I called Annette Monson on the phone in July to complain about this, because when we got all the CPS reports and all the police reports, there's a bunch of false statements in there by Annette Monson. And that's the very reason why we declined to talk to Annette Monson, because we know CPS is corrupt and we know that they lie about you. They're not to be trusted. And the same thing with the police. That's why you never talk to them without an attorney. That's why we declined to talk to them. So that's the very reason why we declined to talk to you, Annette. And so on the phone, when I'm confronting her and complaining about this, and I asked her, what actual evidence on the recording is there of any abuse? And she twice on this phone call said, I guess I made assumptions. And she also said, I guess I imagined that there was evidence because Haley said that you are bad.
Wow.
But there's no actual evidence. But I just assumed because she had her feelings hurt in this recording, because I said that she has psychological issues, because I was just identifying what the problem is. And after and my stepdaughter even said, you hurt my feelings, and I apologize. So I don't see how, like I told Annette, abuse is you're maliciously trying to hurt somebody without remorse. I'm not maliciously trying to hurt somebody. I'm confronting my stepdaughter on the lies she's saying. I'm telling her not to lie. And I'm telling her that if you're going to keep doing this, if you're going to keep lying about this, I don't be your stepdad. You can go find someone else to be your stepdad. I don't need this. I don't need to be treated this way. There's nothing wrong with me saying any of that. And then when she said that hurt her feelings, I apologized. None of that was abuse. So the whole point is, in this phone call, Dan, she admitted that she made assumptions and that she imagined that there could be something. And I said to Annette, well, you know that they recorded us for over 6 months. They have all these recordings. And in none of those recordings is there any evidence. And even the older stepdaughter texting the younger stepdaughter even says in the text messages that there's no evidence of abuse. Wow. And they even said in their text messages, they don't understand why Grandma Susan Manning is doing this. They didn't want me to go to jail. They didn't want this to happen. They didn't want my children to get taken away. They just wanted me to get help. They just wanted me to get therapy, because I'm not a dad who just lets them do whatever they want and have sex. I'm a dad who has rules, like you have a curfew and we want you to go on group dates. Just basic rules.
God forbid that you have morals for your kids and you set standards like the Bible tells us to do. God forbid for that. And that's crazy, man. So you spent 2 days in jail, or was it just overnight?
No, so I was there for about overnight, so about 23 hours.
Oh, okay.
I was able to get out. And then here's another thing too, Dan, because also there's CPS and there's also APS, Adult Protective Services. So when I was released, there was no conditions placed upon me. There was nothing saying I couldn't be around my special needs adult daughter or anything like that. And there was no conditions placed upon me that I couldn't be around anybody. And then 3 weeks later, APS, Adult Protective Services, showed up at our door, and we talked to her, and she closed the case, and she said the allegations against us were false and we're not guilty. Once she talked to us and we were able to talk to her, she closed the case. Well, the same thing would have happened. We just declined because they're corrupt, and they made a bunch of false statements about us in all these reports. But in that APS report, we're 99.9% sure it's Susan Manning who called APS on us to try to get our special needs adult daughter taken away from us. And in that report, the allegations against me were, one of the allegations, that I'm a constitutionalist. Like that's a bad thing. And
I'm guilty of that then.
yeah. And then
and I got one here right there. We got one on the wall over there.
Yeah, and then some of the allegations against us in the DCS petition was that we homeschool. Like that's a bad thing. And then our stepdaughter claimed that night when CPS showed up at our door that it was a yell fest. We were yelling at her all night. That never happened. We didn't yell at her one word. And she also claimed that we came down at 1:30 in the morning. I violently shook her out of bed and her. No, I didn't. I came down about 10:15 because she doesn't fall asleep. She doesn't go to bed till 1 a.m. So it wasn't late for her. And I asked her where the phone was, and I got the phone. That's what happened. I didn't violently shake her out of bed. This is all made up. And then it said, anyways, and so all those allegations got dismissed. And all the, like I said, the criminal case got dismissed. But I just want to make that point that, they're saying that I'm a constitutionalist, like that's a bad thing. And so, and then in this phone call with Annette Monson, when I'm complaining, she all of a sudden doesn't want to keep talking to me. She says, I don't think I should keep talking to you. I think we should talk through our lawyers. And I'm like, oh, that's weird, Annette, because you made such a big deal that we declined to speak to you because you're not trustworthy because you twist everybody's words around. But now all of a sudden, why don't you want to talk to me? And here's the other thing too. They make a big deal that we didn't want to talk to them, but then afterwards, once we have an attorney and we want to talk, they never let you speak. They never let you speak at any of these hearings. You never get to say your side of the thing. All the evidence that we presented to them was behind the scenes through to the prosecuting attorney and to the attorney for DCFS, Oliver Whaley, and things like that. And also the other thing I wanted to hit Annette hard on too, because we had an incident with her back when my daughter was born in 2019. We had a home birth and everything was just fine. But long story short, someone called CPS on us then. We didn't do nothing wrong. But Annette Monson was the one who came to our door, and she just walked in our door. She didn't even ask if she could come in. She just came in.
Wow.
And so on the phone, I told her, you can't just walk into people's houses. That's called trespassing. And she said, yes, I can. I said, no, you can't unless you're invited in. And she said, well, if I walk in and I say I can't, then I can do that. I'm like, no, you can't. And when so she's a CPS caseworker, but then then another CPS caseworker, his name, he's good. His name is Dave Stevens. When Annette Monson passed the case on over to him, he was falsely told as well that I'm a felon. I was on probation and parole. And when I told him that wasn't true, he was like, he was told all this false stuff. And then when he met me in person, he's like, this isn't adding up. What they're telling me about Tim isn't how he's acting and how he talks to me doesn't match up with what I'm being told about him. And then I told him that I'm not a convicted felon. I was on probation or parole. That's 100% false. Steve Cragen made those false statements. Those are false statements that he made. So then Dave Stevens was on a mission to find the truth, and we were able to give him, and then he was able to figure things out. And so he was instrumental in getting this DCFS case closed and getting the criminal case. Yes, but Annette Monson is the bad one. But when it was handed off from Annette, me, my wife, Annette, and Dave, and I was confronting Annette that day too. This was on May 19th, that you can't just walk into people's houses. And she said, yes, we can. And Dave Stevens told her, No, we can't. We don't have the authority to do that unless there's a court order or like a warrant giving us the authority. We can't just walk in. And so Annette Monson's been a CPS caseworker for 17 years. And like I said to her on the phone, for 17 years, Annette, and you still don't know that you can't just walk into people's houses.
So she just comes to your house and walks in without ringing the doorbell or nothing?
Well, she rang the doorbell, you open it up, and she just walks in. She just walks through the door, walks in your house without you inviting her in. And so that's why the second time when she appeared, we declined to talk to her because we already know that she's not trustworthy based on our previous experience with her. And here's in these CPS reports saying, here's the recording where Tim emotionally abused the stepdaughter. And so I'm like, how can you? But Annette hasn't even listened to the recording yet. She even admits in the report she hasn't listened to it yet, but she's already determined that I abused my stepdaughter, and she hasn't even listened to it. So I said, how can you make that determination I abuse somebody when you haven't even listened to the recording yet? And then once you listen to the recording, there's no evidence of anything. There's nothing bad on there. They hyped this thing up like it was some major thing, and there was nothing bad at all, which Susan Manning even admitted in court that there was no actual evidence of abuse, that she just made assumptions. And Annette Monson admitted to me on the phone that she made assumptions.
You know what really gets me? These people, they walk around, right? Because the thing is, 99 out of the 100 houses they go to, no, they don't challenge them. So the CPS, they live, oh my God, right. CPS is here. They let them do whatever they want, say what they want. So they have this, they build up this this power of godhood, so to speak. Like they are in full control. They can do what they want. And and it's true, nobody challenges them, right? Except for when they run into someone like you and me. Yeah, that we're gonna tell them, yeah, you ain't coming in yet. Plain and simple. You know what I mean? I don't even need to talk to. And I want to point that out to folks out there too. That because a lot of people don't know this stuff. You know what I mean? If you're a single mom or just parents in general, guys, and you got somebody knocks at your door, says it's a CPS, you do not have to talk to them. Say, I don't want to talk to you. Go away. No matter how much they bang and all that, even if they have a cop with them, and you tell them right out, I'm not opening this door. If you go to warrant, because sometimes the cops, I've seen a lot of this stuff. I got tons of news on this CPS corruption. They'll bring a cop with them, and the cop will step out of his boundaries or open the damn door now, whatever. It's like, no, don't even crack the door open, guys. Right. You keep that door shut and locked. You tell me if you come back with a warrant, and make sure you videotape it. Come back with a warrant. I'll talk to you. I'll cooperate 100%. I'll talk to you all you want. Until then, have a good day. No matter how much they bang and yell, just walk away from the door and leave it there and keep that recorder going just in case they bust the door in. Now you got a suit against them for unlawful entry, you know what I mean? And in some states, you can actually shoot them. I'm not saying you should do that, but I'm just saying, man, you have a right to defend your property. But I'm just saying, guys, you do not have to let CPS in. They are not some superficial authority that overpowers your constitutional rights. You know what I mean? You have a right to defend your property. You have a right to, king of the castle law, plain and simple. So then, and people say, well, I have nothing to hide. That's the other thing too. I want to point this out, right? Doesn't matter if you got nothing to hide or not. We're not saying that, okay? Do not let them in, because the thing is, most of the time they're going to bring up false allegations. They'll conjure something up just to make a case. And you got to understand, half the people, and again, like I said at the beginning of the show, we're not saying all CPS work is like this, but they do have a lot of pedophiles that work for them, a lot of disgusting, evil, demonic trash that work for CPS. And we got tons of reports, and I'll show you that real quick here. Give Tim a rest here for a minute, and where's that internet? I'm just still getting used to my hang on a second, guys. Let me get this up on the screen.
That's right, Dan. They're not. That's what me and my wife said. They're not used to people standing up to them and challenging them. That's what they're not used to that. So they're not. And so that's a big thing too. Like Annette Monson in her report, she said things I learned from going to our house. I learned that Tim myself is a bully. Wow. Well, Annette, how did you learn that when you never even talked to me? So but I'm a bully only because we refused to talk to you because we stood up for our rights.
You're a bully because you asserted your constitutional rights. Right? I got it right here. You could just go to Google, type in CPS corruption, right? There is dozens of parentalrights.org, Facebook groups. There's all kinds of forums, change.org, all kinds of things that show CPS corruption. And if you look in the alternative media too, we got tons and tons, countless articles how CPS overexerted their authority, and sometimes while kids were in their custody, they ended up sexually abused. You know what I mean? And this is an ongoing thing, man.
That's
and this
right.
is disgusting. You get some trash that really work for CPS that prey on children. You know what I mean? And a lot of sexual corruption happens in
right.
CPS custody, man. So this is a big deal, man. And Tim, what he did, guys, you should model after, because CPS comes to your door, you do not open it. Plain and simple. It doesn't matter if you got nothing to hide and all that and whatever. It doesn't matter, okay? Assert your constitutional rights. Plain and simple. Say you come back with a warrant, I have no problem talking to you. But you're not going anywhere near my kids. And if you come through this door, I'm going to defend myself. Plain and simple. Bottom line. You know what I mean? And, you know, if CPS came to my door enforcement, well, man, they're going down big time. That's for sure. I don't care CPS or not. They're going to go through a window, plain and simple. So, you know, we need to assert our rights as, you know, people who live we're in a constitutional republic, not a democracy. We're in a constitutional republic that we have a right as parents, a right as citizens to defend our property, defend our families, and it doesn't matter if they have some kind of authority. They don't have authority to do that stuff, guys. You know what I mean? Yeah, they're supposed to be child protective services, but most of the time they're not protecting no child at all. And we understand there are bad parents out there. Nobody's saying there isn't. But the thing is, they can't, you know, I mean, you can't let that overpower your constitutional rights. You know what I mean? So you got to stand firm.
CPS is a totally unconstitutional organization. They shouldn't even exist, and that's the point I keep making. If someone believes there's a crime going on, just call the law enforcement, and they can do it all. But the reason why they have CPS is because CPS does things like enter people's houses and things like that, and they even Steve Cragen, the police officer, told me that CPS has the authority to enter houses, but the police don't. But even though he said that, I don't believe that's true. And even Dave Stevens, like I told you, who the CPS caseworker, he told Annette Monson that they have no authority to enter the house until there's a court order or warrant for them to do so. So if they enter without being invited, then they're trespassing. And I think it would have not even gone anywhere. The whole point was to, like you said, to come to talk to them. It wouldn't have gone anywhere. But it's because after to do that by Susan Manning, and then was and anyways, because that happened, then it opened up this whole thing. And but like I said before, Dan, the reason why that this happened to us is because we know what's going on. We know about the New World Order. We have a testimony of Jesus. And there's a whole reason why Jesus overthrew the tables of the money changers. You know, the money changers, they worship Lucifer. That's what that was all about. And that's who they're Luciferians, and that's all that's going on. So anybody like us who stands up against this stuff, sometimes you have strange and weird things happen to you and have this opposition thrown at you, and that's why all this has happened. And I just want to say Susan Manning is the driving force behind all this, because my stepchildren, they have fragile minds because of the trauma they suffered when they were little, and then Susan Manning comes in to prey upon them, to prey upon their fragile mind, and she's the actual abuser. And I gave you some background on her, but there's a whole bunch of stuff I can go into on her, but she's the actual abuser, and then she inverses reality, and she's the one who induced and enabled my two teenage stepchildren to lie and do this, because my oldest stepson, who's their brother, he thought this, and he even wrote a letter to the CPS caseworker Dave Stevens saying that his sisters were lying and that they were only doing this because they were trying to please their grandmother, Susan Manning, and that I've never hurt physically anybody, and I've never been emotionally abusive to anybody. And he said the whole thing is that their dad didn't have any rules and let them do whatever they want. And so that Tim's a dad that has just basic rules, and they don't like that I just have basic rules.
Well, one of my listeners in the chat room, Sister Max, she pointed out too, which is true. The schools are teaching kids that, that too. They're teaching kids that if if your parents hurting
Parents are
your feelings or
bad.
something, rat on your parents, and they even some cases if they got guns or any, the liberals will, the progressives and
That's
socialists, they'll drain the kids. Oh, if they do this, that, you being a constitutionalist, God forbid, you know what I mean? Oh, we got to call on you. You're a terrorist to the state because you're a constitutionalist. You know what I mean? So, they tell the kids, oh, well, if you don't like what your parents are doing, just call CPS. Now, like a kid's, like you see YouTube videos, right? My son was watching these YouTube videos, right? And he asked what CPS was because the kids are just freely calling CPS like you would call 911 if somebody broke into them.
Exactly.
And it's ridiculous. Well, what do you mean
Exactly.
call CPS?
Again,
Obey your parents.
That's such a good. Sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
No,
Dan,
that's
finish.
right.
You're exactly right. That's exactly right, because that's the points I want to make. That's what they do. They brainwash you in public school and on the TikTok videos and these other videos they get on. It's constant demon in Isaiah that says in last days that children will rule over their parents. That's what it's talking about. And that CPS is just there to weaponize the system, the teenagers, against the parents and to attack on the family.
Well, it's not just CPS, too. You got the family courts, right? All over the country. I had,
exactly.
Who was a state representative from New Hampshire, I believe it was. This lady, Mrs. Tremblay, that I had her on years ago, forgot, but she used to work for the family courts in New Hampshire, and she's a state rep and all that. She told me that they're purposely there to destroy the families. And I was a victim of that myself. I got dragged into a family court and all that. Automatically, they don't want you talking to the mother because God forbid you guys work something out. They have a person that goes back and forth, and they encourage the girl to get a restraining order. Even though there's no physical abuse going on, they encourage, you can get state benefits and all that. And meanwhile, they're going to drain the guy dry and drag him to court. You know what I mean? And they got all that stopped. Right. But I mean, I went through hell for a couple of years. And, you know what I mean? I told the courts right out, listen, I don't want you people in my business, plain and simple, you know what I mean? And because we know how corrupt the courts are and all that, but this is what they do.
Right.
Now, we know there's deadbeats out there. We're not saying that, but most of the time, you got people out there. Restraining order abuse is highly done in the courts. If you basically, I'm not saying your wife would do that, but you walked into your house, right? The house that you built, you paid for. Your wife's cheating on you, right? Now you knock the guy out, whatever the case, right? She gets a restraining order on you. You can't go to your own house, your own bed while she's got him up in there. You know what I mean? And I seen that in courts,
right.
And grown men crying before the court say, listen, like she was cheating on me and all that, and the judge threw the guy in jail for a year because he violated the restraining order from calling his wife. You know what I mean? And it's just so corrupted, and it makes my blood boil. It really does, because I seen this stuff in my own eyes and while I was in these court things. You know what I mean? And it is horrible what they do to the fathers. You know what I mean? It really is. And and then there's cases where the girls are really being abused and all that. But the whole system, instead of just saying like, all right, the godly way to do it, it's like, all right, you're the mother, you're the father. Let's get a mediator, like a person of faith, right? Get them in the conference. Say, what can we do to work this out? Let's not go to the court systems. Don't do that. And I had family members who went to court, and I told them, don't do that because it's going to bite you in the ass on the way back, right? Sure enough, it did. You know what I mean? Because the telling thing is, if you bring a guy to court for child support, right? If he doesn't pay, guess what? You're crap out of money. And the thing is, if you put stuff against them, right, and some of these orders, right, they take your license, therefore the guy can't get to work. Now you're screwed. You know what I mean? Now you just screwed yourself. You know what I mean? And the guy's building up debt with the courts now. You know what I mean? So it is, and I recommend people, seriously, stay away from the courts as much as you can. I mean, if the guy is like physically destroying you, beating you, by all means. But if it's just squabbles and you don't get along, stay away from the courts. Don't let them blow smoke up your rear ends, because they're going to tell you, we could get this, that, benefits and all that. No, trust me when I tell you. You know what I mean? Ask people that learn the hard way, and they things they want to make you look green on the other side. Work the stuff out with your spouse or your boyfriend, whatever. And if it doesn't work out, just part your ways. But you stay away from the courts. You know what I mean? Stay away from CPS, any of that stuff, because it destroys families in general. And you say, well, I called CPS, like Mrs. Mann in there, right? She was like, oh, yeah, her thing is she's saving the kids, right? But the thing is, she doesn't realize she's putting the worst on the children, because now the children, just say CPS came and took the child, right? And she couldn't get custody of them. They go off to somewhere and foster parents. They get sexual abuse. God knows what could happen to them. So I'm so thankful that it all worked out for you now. So now what you do, you guys are final lawsuit, obviously, right? Against the court and the police department.
Yeah, we're going to look at suing the police for making
Good.
false statements and for gross negligence because they handed off our stepdaughter to Susan Manning even after Susan Manning said that she's going to kidnap her, and they didn't have any evidence because there was nothing wrong. And another point I wanted to make too, Dan, like you were saying, these courts, they're just set, it's a total racket. And like you said, they're not set up to protect and do what's right. It's just, they're not about justice. It's just a big game to them. And another thing I didn't know, but I discovered through this process, this whole guardian ad litem thing, and I think people know about that. They've gone through divorces, they go to the courts and stuff. This guardian ad litem thing is a totally satanic thing because, for one example, I told that after I got out of the jail, and I told, you know, I barely said a word to my stepdaughter because I didn't want to get falsely accused of witness tampering is what they were trying to do. If I talked to her, they could accuse me of witness tampering. But after about 5 days, I just said to her that I'm very disappointed in what I found on your phone. That's all I said. And then the next day, this police officer comes to do a welfare check. And we found out later through the discovery that my stepdaughter called her guardian ad litem, Bud Powell. And she said that she felt her life was in danger. And so then Bud Powell called the police to do a welfare check. And there's a lot more examples I can give, but they, just like we were talking about before, they have this set up to where if the child wants a box of cereal and they throw a fit and the parents say, no, you can't have that particular cereal, well, they set it up so then they can run off to CPS or call their little guardian ad litem to then weaponize and the system to come in and like, oh, here you go. Here's the box of cereal that your parents wouldn't let you have. And undermining the parents and trying to destroy the family, and then sabotaging that kid's mind and then making them think that being irresponsible and acting this way is justified and good, instead of teaching them the morals and what's right. But yeah, we're looking at, and let me just read this too. This is a text message exchange. I know we're running out of time, Dan, but this is on. They came to our house on April 27th. I said, we're not going to talk to you. April 28th, they falsely arrested me. April 29th, I got out of jail by the power of God, basically. It was a miracle to thwart their plans. And but that same day on April 29th, here's a text. This is their Snapchat. This is my now 17-year-old stepdaughter then saying, have you had, and she's talking with my now 18-year-old stepdaughter. And anyways, and how this all started too, Dan, is because my then 17-year-old stepdaughter was having sex, which she knows she wasn't supposed to do. And she knew if she was able to move out of the house and live with Susan Manning would let her do whatever she wanted. And all this was just to cover her. This is all a big thing for her to falsely claim that I'm bad and then get her younger sister on board, just to basically hide what she was doing, rather than just to run away from it and cover her tracks for her doing her premarital sex. So that's all this was about from the beginning. That's how this all started. So, but this is my then 16-year-old, the younger one, saying to the older one, have you had a really heavy feeling with you the entire day? Because I have. Like, my heart feels heavy and my shoulders. And then the older one says, yeah, I have. The younger one says, yeah, I hate it. I just want all this to end. And the older one says, me too. It's so tiring. How am I supposed to go to work tomorrow? And then the younger one says, dude, I have no idea. How am I supposed to finish school? And the older one says, seriously, why would Grandma, Susan Manning, do this right now? And then let me just get to the next segment. Seriously, why would Grandma do this right now? It's so stressful. I need to be studying for math super hard, but I can't bother thinking about it. And the younger one says, I know, I was only able to write a sentence. She didn't mean for it to happen. She, meaning Susan Manning, didn't mean for it to happen right now, apparently. But the CPS lady came. And the older one says, that's so annoying. CPS does nothing but cause more drama. And the younger one says, no, literally, I didn't want them to be involved. And the older one says, I was just getting better mentally, and now I'm back down completely. This is so frustrating. So I just want to see that mentally that they're fragile. And then Susan Manning, one preying upon them and then undermining us and then encouraging and enabling their bad behavior. And then she's backed up because all that's going on lately and all this stuff is just enabling psychopaths to feel justified in what they're doing, because the very organizations that's supposed to be for truth and justice are also psychopathic, and they're the ones attacking the patriots, the constitutionalists, the Christians, the ones who say 2 + 2 = 4, and then doing nothing. All the Black Lives Matter riots, they destroy cities. Oh, that's okay. And then we don't even do anything, and we're the bad guys, you see. But then to go back and answer your question, yeah, Dan, we're trying to look at suing, and we do have a Give, Send, to Go, GiveSendToGo.com/McGaffin family, where you can donate. And also, I just encourage people to check out my book, Champions Never Quit, God's Close by Your Side. You can go to championsneverquit.com. But we're definitely looking at suing them, and I want to keep everybody updated on that. And if any other reporters, listen to this with any other organizations, there's a lot more details. You can't go over it right now. There's so much to go through, but I have all the contact information as far as phone numbers for those who want to investigate and do more work on this for Annette Monson and Sergeant Steve Craig and all that stuff. And I called the police chief too to complain, and he falsely claimed, or whatever, he claimed that, when they fill out the police report, there's a box that's automatically checked, and that box automatically went to default and was in the box that said that you were a convicted felon on probation or parole, and saying it was the system. It was the system's fault. I'm like, give me a freaking break.
Yeah.
So it automatically is the default, and so you're supposed to check this thing 4 or 5 times over before you submit it, and you didn't see that it was in the box was checked. Yeah, right. And how come there's not 100 other people having this happen to them? How come I'm the only one? No, you know what I mean? So that's completely false. That just shows you how corrupt the police are. They can't, anyway. So I got some of the information out there tonight, and I appreciate being on your show, Dan, but that's a lot of that's going on.
Yeah, definitely keep me up to date what's going on, man. Everybody out there, please pray for Timothy here. Spiritual warfare, man, because it's spiritual warfare is basically what wins these battles. Because beyond all this, guys, we know, because it's the powers of principalities and powers of darkness in the higher places that are doing all this, and you using people to manipulate families. And the thing is, the number one target right now out of everything, it's not money, it's not this or that, it's the family. Satan hates and despises the family. You know what I mean? They're going to use everybody and everything they can to break families up, to destroy them. I mean, look at CPS, right? He's reading the text from the children. The children learn the hard way. Oh man, this was a bad idea. That's exactly what they're saying to each other. This is a bad idea. I don't want CPS involved. I just want this to go away. Right? And that was the quote from the Texas, right? So they learned the hard way. And you guys, if you have any like suggestions or whatever for go to the courts or anything like that, think before you do something, man, because you're going to, and the thing is, they micromanage your life after that. It's never the same again. And they will not let go. Once they latch on, forget it. It took us 2 years to get the whole system out of our way. You know what I mean? We had to keep repelling them away. But man, what a battle.
Dan, you've been through it. You've been through it. But look at us, me and you and others. They've thrown everything they can at us. And all these satanic attacks, they've thrown every possible thing they could possibly do. Use all their legalese, all their Luciferian tricks, all their system, their corrupt judges and lawyers. It's all set up to try to just come after people who are trying to do what's right. And we took all that. We have eaten it for breakfast, and now we're stronger than ever.
Yep.
We have withstood the storm. We're built on a rocky foundation, not on sand.
Amen to that. And that's what they hate, because it's these people are just horrible. They really are. And but the thing is, don't we shouldn't curse them either, much as you want to pop them, whatever. But we need to pray for them too, because remember, they're the victims. They're being used by the evil one. You know what I mean? And so we need to pray for these people. And most of all, and if they don't turn, you tell them one thing: listen, God's gonna cut you down. Johnny Cash, God's gonna cut you down. So let them know God's gonna cut you down, plain and simple. And that's exactly what's gonna happen. You know what I mean? And if they don't turn, repent from their ways, that's exactly what's gonna go on. But again, if you look at the children, right? It's not just the CPS and the family courts. Thousands of children go missing a day just in the United States alone, and nearly a fraction are ever seen from again. You know what I mean? They're putting on child sex trafficking rings. You got government entities who actually kidnap children, and they'll go to foster homes that kids that have the parents are gone, they end up dying, whatever the case. They'll take children and it's the horrible things, the unspeakable things they do to children. You know what I mean? And it is horrible, man. And I mean, I don't even want to get to it because it gets my blood boiling, really does. And I wish I could, Jesus gave me the power just to go smite these people, man, that harm kids. And the thing is, when you read scriptures, Matthew and Luke 2, it says, Jesus says, it's better for you to tie a millstone around your neck and drown in the water than to mislead or with these children in any way, or offend these children. And that means anything, spiritually, physically, mentally. You do that, you got to pay a heavy price. And when it comes to kids, Jesus, right? He even told his disciples, because Jesus is doing a sermon and the kids wanted to go see him. The disciples stopped him. Jesus right away stopped the sermon, looked at them and yelled at his own apostles, and no, you let these kids in. And he told everybody, see these kids? You got to be like them to get into the kingdom of God. You know what I mean? He was very protective when it came to children. You know what I mean? So that, you guys, Satan hates children. They hate. They want to corrupt children and everything else. So we need to protect them at all. That's our duty. That's Tim's duty, my duty. Yep.
Yeah, that's how I am. That's why I don't want CPS talking to my kids. Good. I don't know you. You could be a pedophile. I'm protecting my kids from these satanic organization influences. That's exactly right.
Absolutely. You know what I mean? And good for you, Tim. And God bless you for that. So, was championsneverquit.com. So I put the link in the chat room too. So guys, you got to get the book. It's pretty cool. It's an easy read too. It's a paperback book and real easy read, talking about his, real quick a description of your book. It's basically just, and you were a basketball player too. Is that correct?
Yeah. Let me do as fast as I can, Dan. So I prayed when I was growing up, asking God what I should do when I grow up. And, I was trying to decide between a police officer, a fireman, or to be an artist. But anyways, I kept praying. And then the answer one day when I was 9, I just barely had turned 9 years old, was that I should play basketball and I should become the greatest basketball player ever. And it's not my imagination. It was a real answer to my prayer. And I go into details of how I recognized that was an answer to my prayer. And at first, I didn't get an answer to my prayer, but I kept praying, and then finally I got the answer. So that's what happens in life sometimes. But so okay, if God said this is going to happen, it's going to happen. But I know I'm going to have to work really hard. But with God helping me, there's no way I can fail. So I started working really hard. I started trying to do what Larry Bird did. I tried every day after school. I started practicing shooting baskets 4 hours or more a day as a 9-year-old. And then I tried out for these Super League teams in 5th grade and 6th grade, and I made those teams. And so everything's going according to plan. But then 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, I never made the team. We moved around a lot, lived at different, so I went on lots of different schools. I had really bad knees. I had to get knee surgery later on. Then I went to try to walk on at a community college. Then I transferred to University of Utah. I almost made the team at the walk-on tryouts. And then I tried out again the next year. And at this next year, they can only keep one person. And I was their second choice. So I was one person away from making a college basketball team. And then during one of the pregame meals with all the players and all the assistant coaches, the head coach, Rick Majerus, wasn't there, but all the assistants were, one of the star players who went on to play in the NBA for many years. And he's actually somebody who's standing up against all this coronavirus tyranny now. And he's a really good person. But at this particular time, he was trying to make fun of me and put me down. And he was just saying, you'll never be one of us. It's too hard to be a college basketball player. It's too difficult. And I said, yeah, you're right. It is almost so the point is, it seems like God's not with me. Everything was falling apart. I wasn't making the team. It seemed like he's not there. He answered my prayer, but how come nothing's going the way I wanted it to go? Everything seems like it's going against me. Nothing is going the way that I thought it should. It seems like God's not there. But at this point, I'm kind of confused. I know you answered my prayer, Heavenly Father, but how come I haven't had the success? How come I'm not reaching the result that you said was going to happen? And then I turned to this player. I said, you're right. It is almost impossible to be a college basketball player. It is extremely difficult. And as difficult as that is, it's even more difficult or even more impossible to play basketball in the NBA. But I have done something that's so difficult that not a single player in this room has done what I've done. And not only has no one in this room done what I've done, but not a single college basketball player or NBA basketball player, past or present, has done what I've done. And everybody's wondering what I'm talking about. I said, no one has tried out to make a basketball team as many times in a row as I have, and failed as many times in a row as I have, and still has not given up. I'm like, the only reason you're here is because you just happened to grow 7 feet tall. You didn't choose to grow 7 feet tall. It just happened. Everything just kept going your way. The door just stayed open.
Yep.
And so you just kept going because things kept going your way. The door has continually been shut on me, but I keep choosing to reopen the door. And the way I keep doing that is because I knew God was with me. That's the only way I was able to keep getting back up, because I knew God was with me, even though it seemed like he wasn't. And I said, I know the greatest thing you can do in your life is to get back up when you get knocked down. The only people capable of doing that is a champion. I know the greatest type of person you become in your life is a champion. Mm-hmm. And then because everybody who's played the NBA or college, they all had made their team at one point or the other. Even Michael Jordan, who they said didn't make his high school team, that was only 1 year, and he didn't make the varsity team, but he did make the junior varsity. So there's never been an NBA basketball player that didn't try it. That they all made the team at a certain juncture. So that's what I was saying. And then after that, the thought came to my mind as I was reading the scriptures one day, that remember when I answered your prayer, because I was thinking to be the greatest basketball player ever, I had to make the NBA first. Remember when I answered your prayer, it wasn't to play in the NBA, it was to become the greatest basketball player ever. I was like, oh yeah. And I'm like, I am the greatest ever because I did the greatest thing you can possibly do, which is not give up. And anybody who doesn't give up is the greatest ever. So that was a lesson that God wanted me to learn. And anybody who does that is the greatest ever. And that's how, one of the reasons why I know that's a testimony that I gained from all that, because look what's happened to me now with all these satanic attacks. I was prepared for this moment, already knowing why it's happening because of who I am. And that's why we know if you have the knowledge of what's going on with the lockdowns, the New World Order and all that stuff, then you're not confused and you know what's happening. So it makes it easier when you know who the enemy is, you know what's going on, to stand up and fight back, rather than be totally confused and then be this little paper doll or this puppet or whatever for them to prey upon and bully you and make you a slave. We aren't going to be slaves because we know what's going on and we're going to press forward. So never give up. And that's us. And
Amen, brother.
And that's how things happen. It's not CNN or ABC or NBC, Dan. It's us, citizen journalists, people, us.
Absolutely.
Just open our mouths is what destroys the satanic kin.
And thank you so much, brother. I'll be in touch with you, man. And so everybody, please pray for Timothy and his family, and for healing for the whole family too, for them to mend back together again, for forgiveness and everything else. And so love you, brother. And I'll be in touch with you, man. And it's championsneverquit.com. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you.
You too. So that was Timothy McGaffin, guys, and please check him out. And so, guys, like I said again, I have to emphasize, CPS comes to your door, don't open the door. Even if you got nothing to hide, and I'm sure most people don't, you have nothing to hide, but don't do that. You know what I mean? Because if they're out there for no good, they're gonna bring up something, say, lie, whatever. So, and I hope and pray to God that doesn't happen. Most of the time, like 99% of the time, CPS comes because out of spite of somebody in the family or a friend, whatever the case, they'll call CPS, lie about something just to cause trouble in your life. You know what I mean? So that's happened to the best of us. So anyway, guys, if you like the broadcast tonight, we got our PayPal, Venmo, and Cash App. 3 different ways to support the operation. And if you're on Rumble, okay, we have Rumble Rants. It's a little money bag. He said, so you click on that, you could donate money. And also when we put this up on YouTube later, we have a super chat in there too. So ways to donate to, it helps the operation and the ministry as well. So again, want to thank you all for joining us. And again, PayPal, Venmo, Cash App is on descriptions there, and support Now You See TV, guys. Free month, 30 days free. It's nystv.org. The promo code is Dan the Man. And I want to thank ShakeandWakeRadio.com for carrying the show on that awesome, amazing network. And also BeforeIt'sNews.com is a contributor for them. And tonight, Friday night, Spiritual Warfare Friday, me and Brian, we're going to be interviewing David Bennett. He's known as Jesus Freak. He's all over the internet, also known as Computer Geek. He's a former NASA engineer, okay? And he's going to expose a lot of stuff. And, yeah, it's going to bring up that big, great debate. Is the Earth flat or is it globe? You know what I mean? So it's going to be a very controversial show. So coming up this Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern with me and Brian Reese, this is going to be an awesome show. And the Spiritual Warfare shows have been a blessing, guys. It really has. If you're into spiritual warfare, we expose the occult, we expose the secret societies, expose all satanic stuff in general. You know what I mean? And bring the light of the Word of God into people's lives. And we do prayers for people, have people call into the show, or you could comment in the chat. We interact with people after the presentation. So it is so fun. So please check that out, guys. So that being said, guys, we're out of here. And again, I want to thank you all for joining us on this Wednesday. And it's a good. This is probably going to air tomorrow on YouTube. So I just got to do a couple edits because some stuff you can't say on YouTube. So I have to edit some of the show here. So other than that, guys, and if you're on YouTube watching it, like in the future here, if you want to see the full show, which is only small edit anyway, but it's up here on our Rumble channel. So all the links to all our channels are in the descriptions on all channels. And if you want to save all the confusion, if you go to truthradioshow.com, that's our main website, we have the link of where we're going to be broadcasting for that day. So because we're on several platforms, we have to do this for a reason. Because YouTube shut our main channel down. We lost about 30,000 subscribers, and it's just sickening. So right now we have to juggle around platforms, and thank God right now Rumble is censorship free. So thank you to Rumble, and please stay that way. So that being said, God bless, shalom, and you are the resistance. Declaring war on the New World Order. TruthRadioShow.com.